Hello, I'm Rabbi Daniel Lapp, and thanks for being part of this show, and thank you for sending in your questions to my website. I love reading them, and I love researching them and bringing you the answers. How do you like this one? Can you tell me more about how it was that during the 400-year captivity in Egypt, the Hebrew wives did not let their husbands give up on God's promises? I've heard something about the husbands wanted to stop producing children and refused to lay with their wives, but the women found a way. Thanks, and that's from Marjorie. Marjorie, you're very much on target there, and let me explain what was going on. Look, it is a sad reality, but the way the good Lord created us is that if men are under stress, financial stress particularly, their libido vanishes. And that's unfortunately just what happens. We know that in many places where many industries have closed and companies have shut down, that male sexual dysfunction is unfortunately an inevitable outcome. That's just the way God created men. And men suffer from this much, 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 much more than women do. So not surprisingly, sure enough, during the oppression of the slavery period in Egypt, the Israelite men, yes, they did lose hope. And one of the things that happens in that environment is that they simply were not driven in any way to be with their wives. Now, there's no question about it that lots of little children around fills an environment with hope and optimism. It's one of the great things about Israel, by the way. If you've not yet visited Israel, when you do, keep an eye out for how many children there are everywhere. Those Israelis live in hope. More than once it's happened to us. We're standing at a traffic light waiting to cross the street, and some little kid comes up, puts his hand in my hand. I've never seen the child before, and wants to hold my hand crossing the street. It's the cutest thing imaginable. There are kids everywhere. But there are other parts of the world I visit. I gave a lecture tour in England recently. I was in Italy recently. Not a lot of children around, and it really does change the feeling. Second point I want to make clear is that God created the joy and delight that a husband and wife can bring one another as an end and a good thing in itself. It's not only to produce children, and as a matter of fact, husbands and wives are commanded to be together with one another, even if for whatever reason there is, children are not possible. And so with both these things, the lack of hope and optimism during that Egyptian slavery period had this dreadful effect. And ancient Jewish wisdom shows from fascinating verses in the book of Exodus how it was that these Israelite women, in spite of the suffering they were under, they went to special lengths to seduce their husbands. That's right. They beautified themselves, they made themselves receptive and lovely, and they went to their husbands in order to give themselves to their husbands. That is what changed everything. And the husbands were restored, and not only was their libido restored, but one of the things that comes along with that is their sense of hope and optimism for the future. You know, it's a sad thing, but one can often tell when a man is in a marriage that doesn't provide him with physical closeness and intimacy. Men need that for their optimism and their hope for the future. And for that reason, to this day, we credit the Exodus from Egypt to the righteous women. That's right. Ancient Jewish wisdom says that God took the Hebrews out of Egypt because of the women. Why? What did the women do? Exactly this. They made their husbands renew their sense of hope for the future and made the Exodus possible and, in fact, absolutely inevitable. So enormous value in all of that. I'm Rabbi Daniel Lapp, and I wish you good times in your marriage, in your friendships, in your faith, and in your finances.